Welcome to Three Count Commentaries. Today we're going to be deep diving into the Cody Rhodes episode of Broken Skull Sessions. He's had a conversation with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So this was a very good episode. I loved it. I thought it was it was a story of Cody. That's the one thing, I always try to pull out lessons, things that we can learn from this. And I think what we learned about here was all of the things that Cody, all the frustrations and the missteps WWE had with Cody before he went to on the independents and built his name up again and all that sort of stuff. So this basically was a lesson about Cody Rhodes. And I know on this channel we make fun of Cody a lot. You know, I make fun of Cody a lot, but I've never hated Cody. I never thought Cody was the shit, so I don't like certain things that he does. But I never thought Cody was, awful. To me, Cody was, indeed, probably the best part of AEW when he was there. Because he took his stuff seriously. He presented himself as a top guy. He acted like a top guy. And with the exception of, his ego getting out of control sometimes, his stuff made sense. To a degree, of course. There was always some huge missteps there. But in sitting back watching, him talk about his WWE experience, specifically that stuff, the stuff when he became a solo act and talking about legacy, that stuff really was enlightening because you don't get a lot of information about that era. You don't get a lot of information from young guys during that era. And a young guy who was in the mix for a little while. There were some guys, in that 2006, 2007, 2008 era that are still on the roster today. Randy Orton is definitely one of them. But when they talk about Randy Orton, when they talk to Randy Orton, they don't spend a lot of time in that era. There's so much that Randy could talk about. They don't spend a lot of time on that. But Cody, that was the bulk of his career. So you go back to that era where it's almost like, wow, I remember watching this stuff. I don't remember paying attention to any of this stuff. And some of it, you see that it made an impact on him, but to you, it was not really anything. And I really kind of thought about it as I was watching, especially when he started talking about dashing Cody Rhodes and the masked Cody Rhodes when he was putting brown paper bags over people's heads. I legit was I enjoyed that version of Cody. And I thought that was great. But at the time, it was just mid-card guy doing mid-card shit. And you kind of get that idea that there's a lot of stuff. And I know sometimes people, as we go back and watch things, we pick up on things that we weren't paying attention to at the time. Like when I go back and watch the New Generation era, people are like, man, I love Razor Ramon. It's like, yeah, but Razor Ramon was there during a down period where everybody's talking about, the New Generation era wasn't a draw and it sucked and yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, that's all Razor Ramon was during that whole entire time. And then everybody goes back and damn, Razor was good. Damn, Razor was great. It's like, yeah, you didn't appreciate it at the time. And I think that Cody is one of those dudes that was pretty good. And he was underappreciated. And him being underappreciated led to him becoming Stardust. So after that 3 or 4 minute preamble, let's talk about this episode. And I really want to spend a lot of time on the Cody singles run. Even though that stuff was, everything that he talked about was interesting. Especially when he spent a lot of time talking about his dad. Specifically, let's start there. Because he talked about his training at first. And he said he only really learned a couple of things from his dad. He learned how to take a body slam at age 15. And he took a hip toss. And then from there, it was OVW and all of those guys basically overwrote everything Dusty had taught him about, and he hadn't done that much with Dusty. So he goes into OVW essentially as a blank slate, and he gives all his training to Al Snow and Paul Heyman and Greg Gagne. And, they pretty much eliminated Dusty's influence from him. And he says that it was the promo that he did at the Hall of Fame where he inducted Dusty into the Hall of Fame and how much that meant for him and the family. And he said that they were on hard times when Dusty came back to the WWE in 2005. That he was a trainer and he started working in creative with Stephanie. He says his confidence started to return, and he says that because, Dusty had lost all his money on, bullshit wrestling companies and stuff like that. So he said that Stephanie and Paul Heyman, had pretty much regained his confidence. And Paul Heyman, who had, given Dusty a little bit of work when Dusty was doing stuff in ECW. He's also doing stuff in MLW at the time. And he says that for him, it wasn't a promo. It was, and he said, I never do promos about Dusty. I'm very defensive, and he's always well prepared because Dusty has a negative reputation for being the guy who was booking himself to be the world champion, booking himself to be the top guy. And so he always feels like he speaks about Dusty with confidence and is more pointed. And so this promo, I guess you could say speech, let's change the verbiage. This speech that he did at the Hall of Fame for Dusty at the Fox Theater. And he said this is what led Vince to pull him from OVW. He said he felt like he was maybe 2 years too soon. So he was brought up from OVW in 2007 to feud with Randy Orton. This is when Randy Orton was feuding with Dusty. I remember watching that, by the way, and I was kind of like, I think Cody actually made his his actual debut at the Hall of Fame. And then the next time we saw him was Great American Bash 2007, when they was about to have Randy kick Dusty in the head. It was after their bull rope match at the Great American Bash. And then Cody came in to save him. So they ended up having their first match on an episode of Raw. Great, found out that Dean Malenko actually produced the match. That was pretty sweet. And Cody said he was introduced as a rookie, as a young boy, so that he can make mistakes, not know anything. But the audience could understand that he was a rookie and he was learning. And he said that was a godsend. And he says that that's one of the things that he wanted to change, is that, when the commentary is going to tout a lot of your talent, how long you've been doing this, 4 years, 5 years. And then when people see that you've been doing this for a long time and you still make mistakes and you still are making, lapses in judgment, it makes people look at you differently. And there's little nuggets like that are sprinkled throughout here that Cody drops. And it's pretty crazy. And another interesting thing is when when Steve Austin says that Cody is a 16-year veteran, he says your career was longer than mine. And Cody just kind of looked at him and was like, yeah, I guess it was. Cody started wrestling he said he started training at 15. He signed his WWE contract at 19 or 20. And he's only 36 today. So he didn't know anything in 2007. And he was thankful that he was being introduced as a rookie so that he can make mistakes and screw up and not be perfect. And people can understand that. And that other people need to have that opportunity as well. And I say, like, sometimes WWE tries to do that whole, he's a rookie, this is his rookie year or whatever. And they do it with like 10-year vets. And people get aggravated with that kind of shit. They do get aggravated with that stuff. But the longer you do it, people expect you to be better. And I think about that in terms of, people getting cut sometimes. Like a Taya Valkyrie, who was in the business for a really long time, but she wasn't in NXT very long. So you're talking about somebody who had a long career, but the WWE training hadn't been that long. So any mistakes that she may have made, any accidents or any lapses in judgment, not being able to follow certain protocols, she didn't have a lot of time to sort of become a rookie in WWE terms. She had been doing this, like this industry, this stuff, as Sean always says, doing this stuff for a long time. But WWE, of course, has people do things differently. So I was thinking about that in terms of, allowing rookies to bubble, letting them learn, letting them go out there and screw up. And him saying that he was pulled out of OVW early, that's something he kept going back to, even though he kind of felt like it was done underhanded. Like he didn't sit and crow about how he wasn't ready, yada, yada, yada. He just kind of said, I probably could have used another year. I probably could have used another, I came up too soon. And so from there, he was moved to teaming with Randy in Legacy. And this was in 2008. And he talked about Randy pulling him and Ted up to the rafters. And then he had a conversation with him, had to sit down. Told them that they were going to be in Legacy. And told them that, hey, you're going to get some heat. Because at the time, Randy was a troublemaker. But he was still a top guy. This was one of Randy Orton's down periods where he was just kind of chilling. He wasn't trying to be too spectacular. he was just chugging along. And he says that there was going to be a lot of heat on y'all because the Legacy spot is a good spot. And there was supposed to be, of course, extra other members to the group, but they felt that Cody and Ted were the two guys. And then he says management kept putting him and Ted at odds. And it was a situation where, okay, which one of y'all is it going to be? And he says he didn't really understand it at the time, but he understands it now that, one of these two guys were probably going to be the future. But which one of you is it going to be? Ended up not being Ted, obviously, right? So I'm guessing Cody was the one that was kind of chosen because Ted fell off a cliff after this. Even though he did do some stuff with Maurice and everything, but that he never really got over. And they had a long conversation about what it means to be over too. So he talked about being in Legacy. He got to ride with Randy Orton, get mentored by Randy Orton, but they also had a significant feud with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And he said that he felt like those guys weren't thrilled with working with him and Ted all the time because they had no character and they didn't know what they were doing. And, he says that, they taught them a lot. And I was thinking about that too, because you almost never see that anymore. You almost never see like the rookies spend like that Legacy Degeneration X feud. It lasted a while. It was a pretty long feud. And then when you think about that, you say to yourself, yeah, he had a pretty good run when he was wrestling Shawn and Triple H and stuff like that. They were really grooming these guys, and he says that, not sure that they were thrilled about feuding with them, but he definitely learned. He learned the difference between live event wrestling and TV wrestling working with them. And he says that he felt Legacy should have gone on another year and they probably needed more time. But obviously that didn't work out. He also kind of bemoaned the idea of them just being kind of plain bad guys. They didn't have any character other than Dusty's son, Ted DiBiase's son. And he spent a lot of time talking about that too when we went into Dash and Cody Rhodes. Is that it was the first time he had to do something other than be Dusty's son. And you could tell, especially a little bit later, that he wanted to get away from that. He kind of felt like he was in the shadow of Dusty, especially when Stardust started to happen. Then he's in Goldust's shadow too. He just kind of felt like he was a part of his family. He needed to, he couldn't get away from it. So that was very interesting to listen to him talk about Legacy and what it meant to him. And I liked Legacy, but he was right. When you look at Evolution, the one thing that they did correct with Evolution is they looked good together, but they individualized the group. Each individual member of the group had their own persona. Batista was the muscle, the animal. You had Ric Flair, the nature boy. He represented the past. Triple H, the game, the tactician, represented the present. Randy Orton, the legend killer, represented the future of the business. Legacy just had Randy Orton and two other guys. There was no character for Cody. There was no character for Ted DiBiase. And if they had personalities and personas at the time, it probably would have gotten over a lot better. and they probably would have been able to come out of that thing a lot better to continue that same streak. When you look at the Shield individualized all three members. You know, Seth Rollins was the brains of the operation. You know, he was the speed guy, you know, the sniper, the hitman. Roman was the muscle. Dean Ambrose was the wild card, the unpredictable one. And so when they separated, those three things continued. They had character. You know, even though they all looked the same, wearing the Shield gear, it was told to you, and their behavior and the way that they acted showed you that they were three different people. So when you have a stable and everybody's either melded together or one person sticks out and everybody else is pretty much the same or interchangeable, you can see how that could fail, you know? So Legacy to me could have been really good, but because WWE thought Dusty's son and Ted DiBiase's son was enough, it didn't get over like it should have. And I remember Legacy, you know, so that's a good thing. I actually remembered it. So he talked about dashing Cody Rhodes, and he says that, you know, one of the things was his dad used to always tell him how good looking he was, and that, you know, his dad always thought he was very handsome, and it was very weird, but it's kind of sweet at the same time, you know, because dads almost always talk about how tough their sons are, how smart they are. You never, you know, tell people how good their sons, you know, my son's very handsome. He's a very good looking boy, you know. So this dashing Cody Rhodes kind of came from how Dusty, you know, thought that he was very handsome all the time. And he said that he started wearing clear lip gloss, which he didn't even know existed. And the only real thing he was told was to always say dashing, keep saying dashing. And he says that he remembered that people were shocked by this because it was such a departure from what he was doing. And it was his first real character. Now, here also he says that he started taking acting classes. And this we can back up a little bit, because at the very, very beginning of this episode of Broken Skull Sessions, Austin starts talking about Cody's watches. And Austin reveals that he's a timepiece guy. Oh, I'm a timepiece guy. I see a fellow timepiece guy. I got to ask about it. So he asked Cody about his Rolex. And Cody says that he always learned from Dusty that you don't wear a Rolex until you won the world title. And he said when Dusty died, Dusty had this Rolex that was supposed to be Cody's. And it was supposed to be his Rolex. And he was going to give it to him when he won the world title. And which is, of course, the world title, the WWE title. But Dusty died. And he said he found out later on that Dusty had actually sold the Rolex so that Cody could go and take acting classes. And the acting classes actually started to show in the dashing Cody Rhodes persona. And he says that, you know, you started seeing that, you know, he had started taking these acting classes. And he says that Howard Fine, who was his acting coach, is a great wrestling trainer, because he says there's so much performance in what we do that a lot of the stuff that he learned in acting classes is applicable to wrestling. Now, he's not the only wrestler that's ever taken acting classes, by the way. Some of them take acting classes. I think Dolph Ziggler went and did Toastmasters, which is a comedy troupe, I think, or speech thing. Or, you know, they do stuff like that, you know, other types of performance in order to, you know, improve their in-ring stuff, or in-universe, let's put it like that, in-universe stuff. And it's almost always encouraged, especially since it helps you after the fact. So this was his first character outside of being Dusty's son. And he says, Austin reiterates, all right, now you have something to work off of. You know, your character is your base. It's not perfect, but you have something. It's an opportunity now. And he says that he wanted to explore his own vanity. This is Cody talking. And it gave him an opportunity to experiment and do different things. But then he says at some point, he says that, you know, when you're doing this, and he's pointing at the pictures of dashing Cody Rhodes, you're going to do a lot of ha-ha, a lot of comedy. And they was talking about how Cody started having all these rules where you can't touch him in the face, which is, of course, a rip on Rick the Model Martel and Shawn Michaels and all the pretty boy gimmicks that have taken place before and a couple that have taken place since. And he said he was feuding with Big Show. And he went up to Big Show and says that, he was kind of tired of doing comedy. He wanted to do something a little bit grittier. And Big Show says, okay, cool. Now go get over. And he says he didn't really get it at the time, but nobody could take him seriously because he wasn't over, so he get it. He got it. So then that feud with Big Show was, oh God. Oh, I hate Big Show so much. Big Show is an absolute heat vampire. If you had any heat whatsoever, Big Show is going to kill it. I hate Big Show. Oh, I can't believe they made me think about him. Anyway, they do the storyline with Rey Mysterio, and he talks about Rey Mysterio's knee braces from hell. That the 619 knee braces and how they slice you up and break your face and everything. And he says that kind of led to the undashing Cody Rhodes. He said he put a lot of pressure on himself for this, and because it was his opportunity to do something different. It was serious. It wasn't ha-ha with the dashing Cody Rhodes. And he said they were feeding him some lines, but this was mostly his performance and his ability to do whatever he wanted. And he was mostly proud of this era of the undashing Cody Rhodes going into the Intercontinental title. He was most proud of this because this was so much of him. He says that his inspirations were American Psycho, which, if you've ever seen that movie, that's what the American Nightmare is. Then Phantom of the Opera was another one. And he should have said Doctor Doom, but he's probably not a comic book guy, but that's a Doctor Doom thing too. Kane was another one with the mask thing that it's all, mental. And he talked about the psychology of that too, but pretty much everybody should have understood that. He's wearing a clear mask saying that he's grotesque and he's ugly. And I loved that he talked about the match with Rey Mysterio. And he says that you got to take the walk. And the walk is coming from the ramp to the ring. And he says he hated being in no man's land. And Austin immediately understood it and described no man's land as when you're walking from the ramp to the ring, what are you going to do? No man's land is you out there with no character. You have no persona. What are you going to do between here and here? And I thought about that and I said to myself, oh my God, how many times have we just saw wrestlers just walk to the ring and get in the ring? They didn't do anything, and he was saying you're not coming in there to say anything, not coming in there to do anything or to show anybody anything. You're coming in there for a quote athletic endeavor. So I was like, okay, that's pretty fucking good. That was pretty good. All right. So you got Cody, who felt like he was in no man's land for a long time. No character, no personality, no persona. And then they showed his entrance for WrestleMania 27 when he's wrestling Rey Mysterio. And Cody says this is his first singles match on pay-per-view at all, period. His first singles match was at WrestleMania against Rey Mysterio. But when he's taking the walk, as they explained it, he's doing things like, taking the hood and covering his face. So, he's telling you what the character is about as he's walking from the ramp to the ring. He's showing you what the character is. He has now something to show the audience. So he's not in no man's land anymore. And he said he's felt really good about that. And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Your time, and a lot of people don't realize this. When you're WWE, when they give you a time, 10 minutes for your match, that includes your entrance. So that means the moment your music starts, you're on. I mean, as soon as you come out of the curtain, you're on. Not soon as the bell rings. So that means that everything you do from when your music starts and you come out there to when you get in the ring until the bell rings for the match to end. And then sometimes even a couple of seconds afterwards, you're working. So that means everything has to be a work. You can't take the entrance off. You can't take the exit off, even though we know Randy does it sometimes. The whole entire time you have to be working. And that's an incredible amount of, that's enlightening, because I knew that, but I never really knew that, it's something that you kind of have an idea about until someone says it and you're like, I see it. I absolutely get it, and when him and Steve Austin was talking about this, I got it. And I thought it was very cool. So he wins the Intercontinental Championship because he's doing pretty good with his undashing thing. And he says that the Intercontinental title was like a dream for him, and it made him trust the process. And even though he kind of hated that concept, but he said he felt like he trusted the process now. And of course, it being the workers' belt, and he wanted to change it. And then he says that somebody kind of whispered in his ear, "Don't you want to change it to be more about you?" But he says that, hey, I was so into that version of the title that I wanted to change it to that version of the title. He said he was getting some business advice to sort of customize the belt for the purpose of replicas and stuff like that. And he kind of forego all of that sweet money that he probably would have made by having a custom Intercontinental Championship to go back to the classic version. And he says that, this title, he wanted to get the title back to Warrior status, because he says that, Ultimate Warrior was main event of WrestleMania with the Intercontinental Championship, and it made him think that he was next in line. Now, this is an interesting piece here, because that's a natural progression. A lot of people have said that. When you're the Intercontinental Champion and you're on, and you're running with it, it does two things. One, it gives you a big ego, because you figure, I'm second best. I'm the guy. The world champion is here. The Intercontinental champion is here. I'm one of those guys. And a lot of these guys who have become world champion were Intercontinental champion first. So I'm one rung away from being the world champion. But we double back to Legacy. So he's talking about in Legacy, he started kind of getting impatient. That he kept saying to himself, when am I going to get my break? When am I going to break through? And he never felt like his breakthrough was coming. And then it finally started to happen. He started to see it, believe in it, when Legacy happened. And then, of course, not when Legacy happened, when he won the Intercontinental title. And then, of course, that was taken away from him. And then, of course, there was this block of time where they didn't even go into it on the Broken Skull sessions, where he didn't do much of anything. They went from Intercontinental Champion to tag teaming with Dustin. This is in 2013. Him and Dustin were tag team champions wrestling the Shield. They kind of skipped over some stuff. I'm pretty sure Rhodes Scholars was in there somewhere, right? That was his first tag team, wasn't it? Well, second, after the Legacy thing. Well, third, because they skipped over the Hardcore Holly stuff too. They didn't talk about how Hardcore Holly was instrumental in his career at all. They just kind of bypassed Hardcore Holly and his... Look, who cares about Hardcore Holly? But, it was an interesting time. It was an interesting time. So they skipped some things, but they hit all the major points. And he talked about being with Dustin. And he said being with them on the screen, him and Dusty, it made them a stronger family behind the scenes. And he says that he was really proud of it because it was the last go round for Dusty. He got to do some stuff outside the ring. I think it was with either Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins, where Dusty got to do the jabs and the bionic elbow. And he said that, they were worried that Dusty would look silly, that his pants would fall down if he took his belt off or something like that. And he did it anyway because he wanted to show that he still had it. So he was essentially proud of the tag team with Dustin. And then they talked about Stardust. And I know that Cody really doesn't like talking about Stardust, but he kind of gave the idea behind it and said it was supposed to be Silver Dust originally. And it was supposed to be a short-term thing. And he says that it was just too much of a departure from him. It's not who he was, and it was not what he wanted to do. And it went from being short-term to something that never seemed to end. And then his dad died. And he says that, he doesn't begrudge WWE for keeping him as Stardust even after his dad died, because he felt like he had to be behind the paint. And he kind of goes into this thing where and it was, I wouldn't say dark as much as it was sort of, being the oldest child, I understood what he was saying. But Cody's I think one of the younger ones. But I understood what he was saying. When he says like he wasn't ready to be the head of the family yet. He needed to be behind the paint because he was having a tough time dealing with Dusty dying. And I understood that. I felt that. It wasn't a thing that when, your dad dies, but sometimes you're put in positions that you're not ready for. And Cody says like, hey, I wasn't ready to be who I am at the time. He was still so out of it from his dad dying. He couldn't really process it. And he talked about even today, it's not something that he's ever going to get over. It still feels like it just happened. So for him, Stardust was just a way of not being Dusty's son for a while. But eventually, he just got frustrated. And he says, all my heroes have made tough decisions. And this was a tough decision. He was making decent money. And he didn't know anything about the independents. He had never worked on the independents before. Getting rid of Stardust was not happening fast enough. He kept pitching to get rid of it eventually. And it wasn't happening fast enough. Now, of course, there's that contradiction there, right? He says that my dad died. I'm not ready to be who I am. So I'm okay with being Stardust. At the same time, we at some point, we do have to get rid of this shit. Like at some point we have to get rid of Stardust. And Stardust was just not going away anytime soon. And he started to get frustrated with that. And that's when he wanted to leave. And he says he quit on social media, never signed his release papers. And that after a while, he started getting embarrassed by Stardust because it was going on for so long. And he wouldn't tell anybody he was Dusty's son. That he had this sort of sad clown mentality. And I think that's kind of was seeping into how he was portraying Stardust at the time. And I wish I was on the internet because I hate having to say this, but I was one of those people that said everything that they gave Cody, he got over. He got over Rhodes Scholars. All he did was grow a mustache. And I remember the time he grew that fucking mustache too. And people started really just kind of reacting just to him having a mustache. He came out there and people were just, it was hilarious. All he did was have a mustache and everybody started clowning him for his mustache. And for a while, Stardust actually did work for a little while, but he says that he eventually became so embarrassed with it. But I always thought that when they gave Cody something, he could get it over. He got over dashing Cody Rhodes. I think people believed in it a little bit. People believed that he believed it. The brown paper bag undashing Cody Rhodes was a lot of people's favorite, version of Cody, with the Intercontinental Championship and everything. Then it was the stuff with Dustin and his short-lived feud with Randy Orton for the title. They skipped over that too. Which has led to him being released, quote unquote, I think in kayfabe. So you had that stuff. He seemed to have been really able to do whatever they needed him to do. And then he got stuck in Stardust. And he just could never get out of it. So he ended up leaving. He says that he was institutionalized. He had become captured by the system. He had to break out. He had to get out of there. And he says that to his credit, Kevin Owens helped him navigate through the independents, taught him how to make money on the independents. And he says that he started going to the independents and he took it seriously. So he started showing up at every show, suit and tie, working with the young guys. And he came up with this list And he said he wrestled everybody on the list except Roderick Strong, and that Roderick Strong is still in WWE. So he says that, he kind of want to make that happen. He doesn't know if it's possible. He want to make it happen. Then, of course, they talked about Japan, where he says he went with the platinum hair for the first time, which was, and this is where he started forming the American Nightmare. And, of course, the platinum hair, of course, comes from Dusty and Dustin. So it's a family thing to, with the blonde hair. And he was, able to use Bullet Club in order to get over. And he said he didn't really want to do Bullet Club, but he was challenged to step out of his comfort zone and to do something different. And even though he didn't really want to do Bullet Club and didn't feel comfortable doing it, he felt like, okay, it's a challenge. I'm going to challenge myself to do something more. And I think that he said Matt Cardona is the one who told him to do the Bullet Club thing, because Matt Cardona is his friend. Matt Cardona is something else. And I think he's probably going to end up coming back too, because, and I think I skipped over this. He says that Matt Cardona was the one who told him to come back. That says that it was like his advisor when it comes to, hey, should I go back? And Matt Cardona said, yeah, it's the ultimate vindication. You went away, you made something of yourself, and then you come back. That's why I think you'll probably see Matt Cardona come back at some point. But he took New Japan by, he wasn't exactly a huge star in New Japan or anything like that, but he used it as an opportunity to form himself. And of course, this led to his success in Ring of Honor, which they didn't really go into a lot of detail about his time in Ring of Honor. They just kind of mixed it in with New Japan. Obviously, Ring of Honor is now a AEW property, so they're not going to give him too much credit. I'm pretty sure they probably would have, if Ring of Honor was still a standalone promotion, they probably would have spoken about Ring of Honor a little bit more respectfully. But because it's not, and it's just a subsidiary of AEW now, they just kind of mixed it in with the New Japan thing. And so then we started talking about Cody as an executive. And he had only been talent up to a certain point. And Meltzer puts out there that they can't do 10,000 seat arenas. Ring of Honor couldn't. And then that's when the Elite took up the challenge. Cody was the main one for that wanted to take up that challenge. And they ended up selling out the show where he won the NWA title. They didn't go into any detail about that. But this was his first, opportunity to do executive work. And then he says that it was like Woodstock. But then he says something that was profound that Austin didn't pounce on. He says, and you could talk to all of the guys about this if you ever get a chance to talk to them. He says, I thought every night would be like this. When he talked about being an executive for All In, I thought every night would be like this. Something about him being an EVP was a problem. And I hate that he's just not, maybe when they get old, and it doesn't matter anymore. Right now, everybody's still active, so there's not a laundry list of guys out here ready to bury one another. At least not right now. But I'm thinking this is going to be a hell of a story when Cody's retired and he's like 50 and he can't wrestle anymore. Of him just talking about how big assholes that these guys were in AEW. And I'm thinking that's the case because he just says, I felt like every time would be like this. And he started saying like, hey, we started thinking, what could it be? And being an executive in AEW, so he couldn't just be one of the boys anymore. And that he wanted to be involved in everything and have his hands in everything. And he says, it would have been a great job if I was 45 and not 35. So that should tell you, that was another one. That was the second time he had mentioned that it was a good position, but then there was, of course, downsides to it. Then he says that he didn't want to be a gatekeeper, which was, his position there. And people started making memes that everybody who debuted in AEW first feud is with Cody, then they do Jericho's podcast. And he said he didn't like that. He didn't want to be that guy. He said he felt like he was being overly generous and giving too much of himself. And he said that Arn Anderson was the guy who kept saying that to him, like, hey, get something for yourself here, get something for yourself. And he says, I went from doing the honors to doing the job. And I was like, ooh. And I don't think Cody lost that much in AEW. Like, and that's just the weird thing about it. Like, I don't think he lost that much. But then I had to figure out, like, all right, which one of these felt like doing the job? Because we know he lost to MJF. Obviously, he was instrumental in launching MJF. I mean, it is what it is. Everybody else, well, Jericho and Moxley did a little bit more damage to MJF than helped him. Cody did a tremendous job helping him and set up what the MJF character is, and was the first feud that sort of created the MJF gauntlet idea of you having to do things in order to get a match with him. You know, him being elusive in that way. So he lost that feud. He lost that match. He lost the TNT title to, how about I call him Luke Harper? Jesus, what the hell is that guy's name? Brody Lee. He lost the title to Brody Lee. I think he had a tremendous amount of respect for him. I don't think he probably saw that as being a big deal, but he did it in a quick fashion. You know, not a long match, but to really establish Brody Lee. Of course, he did the squash job for Malachi Black. You know, he just took a kick and got pinned. Both of those times allowed him to go and do other things, though. So, I don't know. Of course, he lost to Sammy Guevara, or he lost to Darby Allin, I think it was. One of the two. And I think he lost to Sammy Guevara. And there's probably some other losses in there that I don't remember. But he was talking like he was, Stardust again. Like, I went from doing the honors to doing the job. I'm like, wait a minute, you ain't lose that much, did you? You ain't lose that much. But he kept saying that, he had this idea that he was doing so much for other people, he needed to do something for himself. And he didn't want to be a gatekeeper. He didn't like that whole meme of first feud is with Cody, and then you do Jericho's podcast, and you go on to do other things. He didn't like that. So he didn't get into any of the background stuff with him and Tony Khan, which I'm guessing is going to be all of the all of the stuff they're going to talk about in future documentaries and stuff like that. So he says that, he was most proud of the AEW stuff with him and Dustin, because that's the feud that in the match that they wanted to have in WWE, they didn't get a chance to. And I was, from my reading of the dirt sheets at the time, that was the match that kept him as Stardust. That it was supposed to have been Dustin versus Cody at WrestleMania. I forget what year that would have been, because they stopped using numbers. So it would have been, 31? Something like that. And they bumped the match to that roadblock or whatever that was, 2015. And the match stunk. It was absolutely awful. It was Stardust versus Goldust. That match was awful. It was awful. Legit the worst shit I've ever seen. It was one of the worst matches. It's probably one of the worst matches Dustin has ever had. Certainly one of the worst matches Cody has ever had. And the crowd did not care. And I remember that whole, for like months, everybody kept saying it was going to be Stardust versus Goldust at WrestleMania. It's going to be Stardust versus Goldust at WrestleMania. And there was this whole belief that that's what was going to happen. And then it popped up on a random roadblock show and nobody cared. And I think at that point, it was supposed to have been Cody breaks out of Stardust and fights Dustin as himself. That probably would have been sweet. That probably would have been nice. So I remember when he talked about that being his proudest moment for AEW, so he peaked early, because that was the first match that he had in AEW was with Dustin. And he just wanted to have this match. And I remember this being the match that was really, really pitched on the internet at the time for him and Dustin at WrestleMania, and he didn't get to do it. They got bumped from WrestleMania. They had the match on Roadblock. It was terrible. It sucked. He was still Stardust. And I think that's what made him want to leave. because that creative change kept him at Stardust far longer than it probably would have. So he finally got the match that he wanted in AEW. And Steve Austin asked him why did he leave, and he says that he's very proud of AEW and that he felt like it didn't need him anymore. And then Austin said he was going to correct him. He said, well, maybe it still does need me, but I take Arn's advice in so much that I needed to do something for myself. And doing something for himself was to follow his dream, to get the one that got away. The one that got away from his dad. He says it's not a storyline, it's not kayfabe, it's legit. The WWE title escaped Dusty, it won't escape me. Then, of course, he talked about his return and who made the call first to about going back. And he said Bruce Pritchard called him because Bruce had heard that the contract was coming up, and he called just to make sure it wasn't an angle. And from there, it led to him meeting Vince. And he says me talking to Vince should have happened in 2015. It was the meeting that should have happened years prior. And he was able to tell Vince everything that he wanted to tell him, even though he says that there were no promises about anybody signing any contracts. It was just a meeting between the two. And he got off his chest everything about Stardust and all of his problems that he felt that he had with the company when he was there before. And he says that at the point, he says that Vince sometimes doesn't realize his own importance. And, he was able to talk with him on a personal level before they started talking business. And that conversation led to him coming back. So that was very cool, and you hear about that a lot too, that these guys want to talk to Vince and they can't get him. They can't get a hold of him. But then there's weird shit happens, some weird blow up, something huge occurs, and now Vince has to get involved. But most of the time it's too late. There's a there's a big thing already occurring. So in this situation, Vince didn't get to the Cody thing until damn near 7 years later. Like, I'll get back to you. It's going to take a while. You've been waiting outside that office for a long time, so I'm glad Cody left. It ended up being for the best. Sometimes leaving, either whether you get fired or you quit, it's for the best. And in this situation, it was for the best. And he says to him, wins and losses matter. And he felt like he was losing too much in AEW, and he felt like he was, a job guy in WWE, and he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to be a gatekeeper. He wants to be the guy. He wants to be the top guy. He wants to be the world champion. That's what he wanted for himself. And all of the talk about how he was doing too much for other people, it got to him. And, I don't think Arn meant that, hey, get the fuck out of this company. I think that Arn probably meant stop doing so many jobs. Stop, agreeing to lose so much. Stop being so nice. Stop, letting guys come in off the street and get over on you. Make these guys put in some effort to work up to your level, which theoretically, when looking at Cody's position in the company at the time, even if you thought other people were bigger stars or more important, he still shouldn't have been the first guy. He still shouldn't have been first. So I get it. I get what he meant, And he said basically that he's going with his gut from now on. He still takes in a lot of advice and everything, but he learned from Shawn Michaels. Now, he's not going to ask for a bunch of people's opinions. He's going to keep a small, tight-knit group of people that he cares what they think. But he's going with his gut, all of his creative and everything he's going to do. It got him this far doing it himself. And he's going to take his career into his own hands. And I thought there was something incredibly masculine about that I really enjoyed. I really thought that was fucking cool. Especially when you hear all of these guys, and every time they leave WWE, they whine about all the things that they had to do. All the things they made them do. All of the crybabies. And then you have Cody say, look, I've been through that shit. I was Stardust all of that time. They shat on me. And so now I'm going back. It's going to be different. I'm going to do my own thing. And so he basically said, look, it was an agreement that was made. I get to go with my gut. I'm in command of who I am and all of my faculties. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what I can bring to the table. Let me do my thing. There is something, again, I think I said this when Sasha Banks said something similar about how she likes to eat steak just like Vince. And when people stand up to him, I like that. I love that. I don't like whiners. I don't like when people go to the dirt sheets and go to the social media and, oh, Vince did this. I like when I hear wrestlers say, look, he's not going to push me around. Fuck that. I'll quit. I'll go home. I'll take my ball and go home, whatever. I love that shit. CM Punk walking out because he didn't want to wrestle Triple H, thumbs up. I didn't start disliking CM Punk for that until he started whining about it. Until it became part of his mythology. My thing is, if you're being mistreated by anybody, regardless of who it is, you will stand up for yourself. I have no problems with people standing up for themselves. I had everything to do with people fucking whining. Or saying, oh, the reason I didn't get to make it was because of blah, 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 blah. Bullshit. Bullshit. Stand up for yourself. I have no problem with anybody who wants to stand up for themselves. I have a problem with whiners and people who don't try to do the thing, do the job. I can't stand it. I cannot stand that shit. There's so many people whining in the world today. And you have this guy, Cody, who has something. Maybe he ain't going to be the Rock or anything like that. I mean, for fuck's sake, he's Cody Rhodes. But he worked really hard on everything. He was made promises. They didn't keep them. He got pissed and quit. Right thing to do. If they're fucking you over, there was a plan for you to wrestle your brother at WrestleMania. You were going to get rid of Stardust. If that was the plan, the dirt sheets told me that was the plan. Might not have been the plan, but let's say that it is, for the sake of argument. If that was the idea, and then they changed it, and they were like, oh, well, you're going to have the match with Dustin, but it's going to be in February, not in April. And you're going to still be Stardust. You'd be like, fuck that, I'm out of here. You know what? Thumbs up. Hell yeah. If they told you this was going to happen, it's one thing for them to say, look, there's a reason why this can't happen. There was no reason why you couldn't have Cody versus Stardust or Cody versus Goldust at WrestleMania that year. I don't even remember anything else on that fucking card. Mainly because they stopped using numbers. They kept using numbers, I probably would remember. But he was promised something. He thought something was going to occur that didn't. He was disappointed. He was upset his dad died. He got to get the fuck out of there. But he didn't whine about it, forever and ever and ever. He let it be known that's was his problem. He didn't want to be Stardust anymore. Then he went on and he got bitter about it, which, was part of his gimmick for a while. And I wasn't thrilled about that. I hate when people hold on to shit forever. It's like it was 6 years ago. Like your dad being dead. I can understand you holding on to that. But a bad gimmick, I wouldn't hold on to that forever. You try to get away from that as soon as possible. But knowing Cody, and because I saw Cody in Defy Wrestling, this is how I know about the cameras and everything that they do. He was wrestling, I forget who. And one of the first things he did was the same thing he did at WrestleMania. He did the cartwheel and the Stardust thing, and then kind of threw it into the crowd or pitched it or whatever, pissed on it or whatever. And that was his way of saying, like, fuck Stardust. And that just became his persona. But it also put a chip on his shoulder. And sometimes that chip on the shoulder is what you need in order to succeed. And there's been a lot of guys who were happy-go-lucky wrestling. I'm just so happy to be here. And then WWE puts them through the ringer, stretches them and twists them and breaks their bones and everything. And then they come out with a bad attitude. And Shane Douglas was perfect because he went into WWE, Brighton, Shane Douglas, and he came out the franchise. He came out fucked over. So he's like, oh, hell no, never, never again. Fuck those dudes. They put a chip on his shoulder because he believed in the process and the process failed. And it happens. It fails a lot and it fails a lot of people, but not everybody bounces back. You can end up like Ryback if that's what you want. Just a permanently bitter, never really going anywhere kind of motherfucker, a Rene Dupree. Or you can end up like Cody. You can end up like Drew McIntyre. You leave, you make yourself better, you come back. And those are the kinds of stories that I really enjoy. Now, they talked about WrestleMania first, but I'm going to talk about WrestleMania last. So, the WrestleMania match, where he talked about how special it was for him. And he said that he never thought he'd see his his logo on WWE TV. Austin dubbed his pop the Road Warrior pop. I don't know about that one. I would consider that. I would consider it, but maybe not. And he says that he considered this match a freebie. This was Cody talking. That as far as the decibels, as they talked about that too again and again. And the reaction. All he cares about is the reaction. Whether he's getting cheered or getting booed. He just wanted the reaction. And he said that he figured people would just be happy to see him. And therefore, whatever reaction he got at WrestleMania was going to be a freebie. It wasn't going to be something he takes to heart. So, but that, of course, continued as he continues getting great reactions. And then he says that he wanted it to be, Dusty's kid, Seth Rollins, one of his NXT kids, versus Dusty's real kid. And that was really cool. And WrestleMania 38 was very special for him. And so this was very sweet. This is a very nice Broken Skull sessions. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't believe I talked about it as much as I did. I didn't think this video was going to be so long. But it was just so much there that I found interesting. As these two guys sat here and, it was very enlightening for a time where a lot of people were kind of on the downslope in wrestling, which was that 2007 to 2015 era. Because that was right before they went PG, and then the early stages of the PG era. And then we get into the more modern stuff around 2015, but Cody was already gone around that time. So this was very interesting. It was very enlightening. It says a lot about, his pedigree in WWE. And that's really what it felt like. This Broken Skull Sessions felt like an episode to tell fans who were not familiar with Cody, because he had been off TV for so long in WWE. And then if you were kind of young, you may have heard of Stardust. And, he was Stardust for 2 years maybe? And he didn't want that to be his lasting legacy. So this kind of felt like a refresher. Like, of all of you people who thought he was Cody from AEW the whole time, it's like, no, this is his entire WWE pedigree up until this point, of him coming to WWE now. So you could say it was his road to the top. Oh, I know that's a bad pun. I get it. I had to use it because of that stupid show. They didn't talk about the stupid show. Why didn't they talk about the stupid show? They didn't talk about Randy either, though. I wish they would have talked about Randy. About how he met Brandy. But maybe they'll do that some other time. But he didn't save racism or the United States on this one. So that was too bad. But he did, provide almost 2 hours of entertainment. So that was pretty fun. But let me know what you guys thought. Did you watch this episode? Like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.